Hello again, everybody. Another episode of Zach's blog. I'm going to be doing 2 weeks this week, and that's because I forgot to film one last week, but hopefully it won't be any less detailed. So the 2 weeks that we're going to be doing are February 1st through the 5th, and the 8th through the 12th. Getting right into it. Monday we started out with Lou's class, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about both of Lou's Monday classes, both the 1st and the 8th. And the reasoning behind this is because they were very similar. So on the 1st, after Qigong, we went into doing this weird acting exercise that I can't say for 100% certain that I know why we did it or what it was for or anything like that. But I can say it was interesting to experience. I'm glad that I did. She told us that this exercise would help out with trying to learn how to be a character who has maybe a disability, like their ankle was stiff or their knee was locked into place forever or something along those lines. But she didn't explain exactly how those things kind of come from this exercise, so I'm not entirely sure what she means, and I don't think anybody else in the class was. Everybody talked to Alex about this on Wednesday the 10th already, so... But anyway, what this acting exercise is putting yourself in an awkward position and holding it, trying to release all of your muscles in your body, as well as remove your mind from your body, if that makes sense, without killing yourself, obviously. And once you've properly done that, your body will start moving on its own. It'll do things that you're not telling it to do. Have you ever seen Young Frankenstein? There's a scene at the beginning of it where he's talking to a bunch of other scientists, and he gives a demonstration using Mr. Hilltop. And he asks Mr. Hilltop to raise his knee, and he does. He lifts his knee up in the air. Now that's a voluntary reflex. Whereas what this acting exercise is telling us to do is an involuntary reflex, something that we don't actually tell our bodies to do. Not like somebody's going to knee you in the crotch, but more like your body is uncomfortable and it's going to try and move on its own since your brain isn't telling it to move. Apparently we do this every night in our sleep and just before bed and things along those lines. So that's what she's trying to get us to do. And she's wanting us to do it in a way that seems rapid and isn't controlled by our brain, but also isn't just slow, like every now and then twitches. So, to be completely honest with you, and I hope that this doesn't piss anybody off, but I think I was the only person in the class who actually got it, as far as getting into it goes. So, she seemed happy with the way September was moving and everything, but I don't think September was doing what Lou told us to do. So September was doing essentially what we do in Keith's class, and that's disconnect our mind from our bodies and then just kind of move around the room without actually specifically thinking, okay, this is the next action that I'm going to perform. You just kind of do it. Whereas what I think Lou was wanting us to do was for our bodies to actually take control as opposed to just not telling ourselves what to do. And to give you an example of that, what ended up happening to me on the second day is I ended up on the ground, face down into the ground, like literally my face is smushed against the ground like this. My body's kind of crooked and twisted. And then all of a sudden, like my hand starts flopping on the ground. It's an entirely involuntary movement. My leg, one of them lifts up off the ground and points in one direction, and then flops back down into the ground, and then another arm decides to shoot underneath me and try and flip me over, and it's doing all of these weird things that I'm not telling it to do at all. And my face also changed a little bit. My tongue kind of flopped out of my mouth. But what September is doing is running around the room and snapping her fingers and clapping on the walls and patting on the ground and jumping up and down and doing all of these things that I don't think is what Lou was asking of us, but I could be wrong. Maybe she's doing it right and we're all doing it entirely wrong, but either way, it wasn't explained well enough to be able to determine why we were doing it and how specifically to do it. But it was still an interesting exercise. That being said, we had Stephanie twice as well. On February the 1st, we went into her class. It's usually Alex at that point, and it would have been our workbook class. But because he was in New York doing the IRTA auditions, he couldn't be there, obviously. So Stephanie took over for him, and she did a good job of doing both workbook and contextual studies that day. And she asked us some very important questions. She asked us what's working for you in classes, what isn't working for you in classes, and what can the teachers and staff do to fix that. And then just shortly after that, she asked us to give a little bit of feedback on ourselves and self-reflection. So she asked us, who are we, basically? And during this time, I think I was probably the quickest to write things down on the piece of paper for who I am. She gave us 3 questions. What are your best 3 attributes before beginning in the MFA program? And there's 1 for each category, and the categories are personal, theory or research-based, and practical. And as soon as I got this paper, I wrote down things that I liked about myself that I thought were my best attributes. I'm looking around the room, and everybody else is like pulling their hair out trying to figure out things that they like about themselves. I didn't realize how insecure everybody in this class is. I thought every single one of them loved themselves and were much more confident than I am. But apparently I know more about myself if they're having that much trouble with it. So in the personal category, I said that I'm very kind and caring, because I am. I know that I am. I know that I do good things for a lot of people. All of my friends, all of my family, I would do everything in my power for them. Problem is I don't have a lot of power, so it frustrates me. And then the theory and research-based category, I said that I'm very open-minded and I allow myself to try new things. Probably because I had just gotten out of Lou's class and we had done that really weird exercise that I had no idea why we were doing it. But I was open-minded, I did it, and I think I got the best results out of anybody in the class, personally. And then in the practical category, I said that I'm consistent. I'm very consistent, especially in the classroom, in the workshop. I don't ever throw people curveballs. I don't try and change things up unless I'm asked to. I mean, I will take liberties with things and do my best to put an energy into it and make it look interesting and funny and whatever I need to be doing. But that doesn't mean that once I have it that I'm going to change it to try and find something better. Maybe I should be doing that, I don't know. But people seem to like my consistency. They know what's coming. But then she asked if these things were the same, or we think that they're the same since we're about 5-6 months in. And my personal and theory research-based categories, I said, yes, those are the same. But my practical category, I said, when I understand the text, I'm quick to find my character and to make choices. And I think that's true, that I can find a character at the drop of a hat as long as I understand the text, and as long as that character is very clear. I've definitely had a few times in the past where I've had characters who I didn't understand all, and I'm just having to make choices and not really get them. But like with She Ventures and He Wins, for example, Squire Woodby is very clear-cut. I know what type of character he is. He's very easy to make choices with. And then for the remainder of Stephanie's class, we went into learning about different authors of the time period. And this actually became important for next week because we did a little quiz, not being graded on it, but still a little quiz on some of these authors and whatnot. So I'm glad I paid attention in class. And as far as the other questions that she had asked, like the what's working for you, what isn't, and what can they do to fix it, I'm trying to remember what I wrote down for that. Everybody else seemed to have problems with, like, Lou. And I don't really have any problems with her. I think she's great. I like learning all of her little acting exercises she can teach us, as many as she can. I don't understand why people don't like her. Um, the one that I'm actually having trouble with is Colin. Sometimes we do things that I think are appropriate for the period or a little bit later on, that I really like. I do like his conditioning at the very first beginning part of it, the stretches and things like that. I think that's very helpful. But we did Stomp one week, and I'm like, I don't understand why that's important. It's just, and it was literally, well, I mean, it was only one week because I missed one of his classes the week before that. But yeah, I don't understand why we needed to do Stomp. We did the waltz the first semester, and then our dance for As You Like It. And then this semester we started out with Stomp and doing the pattern hand movement, feet movement things. And now we're moving into the foxtrot. And I think that is a dance that we need to be learning. Same with the waltz. In Lou's class, we're learning the minuet and ballet, and I think those are important for not only building our leg muscles, which are going to come into play next semester with our animal work, but also with learning any of the period dances. They're all based around ballet. So if you can learn ballet, you can learn these other dances. But yeah, I mean, if Colin stuck to the foxtrot, the waltz, minuet, the polka, other period type dances, then that would be great. And here's what I am going to say about Lou. I think that with Stephanie doing our contextual studies with us, we don't need to be doing research for her movement class. What we need to be doing in that class is moving around as the characters in the time period. She needs to talk to us about how they're moving around, remind us of how they're moving around while we're moving around, show us how to sit, how to stand up, how to interact, do the bows, that type of thing, which would play more into our plays. But instead, we're doing these research projects every other week or so that, yeah, they kind of help, but we're not doing the costuming. We're not doing the makeup. We're not doing the entertainment, and we don't need to learn the history twice. Contextual studies teaches us all of the same stuff. Not only that, but then Chris Garner also had us do a research project at the very first week of class. So we've had this stuff hammered into us. It seems kind of pointless to have Lou's class do that and not actually have us moving around in the period style, if that makes sense. So moving on, went into Keith's class, and that week he had us doing flicking and ringing. And flicking was kind of, moving a specific body part in like a flicking type manner, like you're flicking off a bug or you're twitching your head, that irritating, something's bugging me type of movement. And then the ringing was done with a partner, and it was kind of like wrestling, like you're wrestling with your little brother or your sister or something, rolling around on the floor trying to get information out of them, squeezing and moving them around. Now, flicking gave me a feeling of fear or disgust, like there was bugs on me or spiders or something and I'm trying to get them off, and it was just gross and horrifying. And then ringing gave me feelings of stress and argument, like I was trying to fight something out of somebody, I was trying to argue with them, that type of thing. So it was a very weird class in Keith's on Monday. Came out of there feeling not too great, but he does like to have us do floating at the end of it, which is supposed to make us feel happy and elated, and it does. It helps out a lot, so I'm glad he has us do that. So we're moving into Francois's class, and she teaches us new stuff every week. This week we started working into the sinuses and the face muscles, And so we usually do our dropping down and the that type of stuff. But then she's got us now bringing it all the way up here into the nose, and we're doing me, my. And so yeah, that's where we are now, getting the sound to come from up here. And while I don't enjoy Francois' class specifically, I do know what it's doing for me. I can definitely feel a difference in my voice and how I talk and how I breathe, which also might come from the fact that I've lost a lot of weight, but I'm not sure. And then we moved into our final class of the day, Roger's class. And what we're doing now, well, February 2nd anyway, we did 3 parries per advance or retreat. So let's say these are my feet here. This is my back foot. This is my front foot. One step is just 1 foot. And in the time of that 1 step, you're doing 3 parries. And so every 2 steps back or forward, you're doing 6 parries altogether. And so every time you take 4 steps, then you've gone through the cycle of 3 parries per step. And I personally love Roger's class. It's so much fun. I mean, I get corrected a lot, but so does everybody else. And even though he's correcting me, I am learning from it. I'm sword fighting now at this point. Like, I hooked up with Jared last week, and he and I were king, 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 like, quick. It was pretty cool. I'm really enjoying that. Moving into Tuesday. So we went into Lou's class, and we did ballet. And oh my god, my calves were hurting after that class. Because I forgot to mention, on Monday the 1st, she had us do calf rises against the wall. And that got our calves working pretty good. And then we got into ballet, and we're doing more lifting with our calves. So by the end of Tuesday, I was limping because my calves were that bad. Colin had to stretch out our calves specifically. So yeah, we're continuing the ballet with her. And then after her class, moved into Colin's, and we finished out the stomp thing, which, I'm so glad we're done with stomp. That was just annoying. But we moved into something a little bit more interesting, the foxtrot. And the foxtrot is very similar to the waltz, just with an extra step. So the waltz is 1, 2, 3. So the foxtrot is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm enjoying the foxtrot. I think it's a pretty good dance. I hope we continue to learn a little bit more about it. Although I think we're done with that after this current week that we're in. Moving into Rob's class, didn't sing, so I'm not going to talk about that much. After Rob, moved into Phillida, and we did a poem about progress. Now, this particular class kind of bothered me because she didn't give me any notes at all. I know I'm not perfect with my RP because Alex corrects me, and Lise corrects me, and Simon corrects me. Am I perfect in Phillida's class? Maybe. Or maybe she's just given up on me. Then we moved into Rob's ensemble singing class. Having a bit of problems with this class. He wants us to memorize these songs that we're doing, and he's given us 5 of them in 4 weeks. That's 5 extra things that we've had to memorize this semester that we didn't have to do last semester. And I got most of them down pretty good. I'm having trouble with the Putnam County Spelling Bee, which we're doing right now. But that's so kind of annoying, to be honest with you. Just adding more and more things that we have to memorize. It's hard. I'm doing my best. I don't have Aubrey's brain. She can memorize things in like an hour and know it forever. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just complaining to complain. So by this point, February 2nd, we have Putnam County Spelling Bee, Me and My Girl, and In the Same Boat. I think there's one more in there. Anyway. So yeah, that's... I like doing ensemble singing. I think it's important to help us out as a group. but I don't like having to memorize our songs. It seems pointless to me. Moving into Wednesday, we had Rod first thing in the morning, which actually it was supposed to be Simon this week, but something happened somewhere that we didn't have class. Nobody showed up, or at least I was told nobody showed up. I didn't actually make it to class that day. I slept in. Sorry. But I'm kind of glad I did, because according to everybody in the class, nobody made it anyway. We moved it to the next week. So with Alex gone, Lise took over our class, our acting class for Alex, and she gave a lot of good notes. She came in the room and we were right into it. Madison and I were the second group to go. She gave us lots of good feedback and then ran workshops with us. So not only did she give us like her little notes and everything like Alex does, but then she ran individual workshops with our group. So Madison and I got a workshop with Lise after doing our show to help us out. One of the notes that Lise gave us is that she wants distinct choices for each proviso. So she had us go through our scripts and list the provisos from least important to most important, and then we have to project that on our next performance. And I think that's a brilliant point, that we need to make each proviso either build or have specific provisos be more important to that character, and so they're more pronounced and things like that. So after Lisa's class, we moved into Chris Garner's workshop, and we ran Act 4, of which I'm only in Act 4.1, so we only ran that one. And so 4.1 is the scene where Squire Woodby comes back to Dowdy, and he is basically asking her forgiveness for being late or not showing up that night at all, even though he promised her he would. And so we ran that scene. It's kind of an adorable scene, even though it's me being Squire Woodby, who's very horrible. He's a sociopath, basically. But it's kind of funny. She's cutting up Squire Woodby's clothes and throwing them into a tub and whatnot. And Squire Woodby's holding on to him while she's pulling the clothes and cutting them up. And she tells him that he's not going to have any new clothes until Easter, so he's basically going to be walking around in his undergarments. Or naked, I don't know what she's going to have him do. But he eventually has enough of trying to explain what happened, which he does tell her the truth. She just doesn't believe him. And then when he tells her a lie, then she believes that, which is funny. And he eventually just gets tired of her cutting up his clothes, and he does the usual thing that he always does to get out of it, and comes up and kisses her and talks all baby talk with her and everything. And she immediately changes her tune and is in love with him again. And so that's a fun scene. I really enjoyed doing that scene. So that was Wednesday. Moving into Thursday, we have Chris all day, and we ran Act 5 all day. It's a huge act, compared to some of the others especially. And because Act 5 only has the one scene, it makes it all the more difficult to do. But one of the things that we had to do was to figure out where to put the Squire Woodby scene so that it wasn't stealing the show at the end of it. And Chris wanted to put it right smack in the middle of the show, so there would be the Lovewell scene, Squire Woodby, and then the rest of the Lovewell scene. And I came up with the idea of putting Squire Woodby scene at the beginning of Act 5, and then the rest being Lovewell, so it doesn't break it up. They seemed to like that, and that's the way we're going to do it now. And then on Friday, we ran the entire Lovewell part first. So we didn't have any of the Squire Woodby stuff kind of breaking it up. We just ran it all in chronological order so we could see the Lovewell story by itself. And then we turn around and did the same with the Squire Woodby scenes to see that story. And that's important. I think that gave us a great idea of how everything flows together and why each scene is important. It also showed us that there really isn't a tie-in into these scenes anymore, because we cut out like the final 4 lines of several characters from the Lovewell scene who show up during the Squire Woodby scene because we're double cast. There's no tie-in between these two scenes anymore. And so people like Rachel and Jared flat don't show up in the Squire Woodby stuff because they're only Lovewell and Charlotte. I mean, they do show up during the devil scene, carrying me off stage and everything, but yeah, they're not in it otherwise. And then on Friday after Chris Garner's class, I got sick and went home, stayed in my bedroom all day, not feeling too good. So I didn't go to Simon or Carrie's class that day. But I do know that in Carrie's class I wouldn't have sang anyway, so I don't know how much I would have gotten out of it. Alright, so moving into the second week. And I already talked about Lou, so I'm just going to go right into Stephanie. And this week, she wanted us to read The Country Wife before coming in, which I did. Everybody else did too. And we were just going to discuss it practically, go over it, and we did. And she asked us a lot of important questions about it, things that gave other people clarity, and we really broke down the whole thing. And so now when watching the Country Wife scene in Alex's class, everything makes much more sense. Now we all know who Mr. Horner is and what he's done and why he's done it. And so it's not just a scene taken out of an entire show. Now we've all read the show, so we know what's happening before and after said scene. And it adds a whole lot more context to it. After we talked about the Country Wife, we talked about period playwrights. We finished that section up. And then she gave us a little quiz on the period playwrights, which I talked about earlier. We moved into Keith's class, and this was a great week for me in Keith's class. We did floating, gliding, thrusting, flicking, and pressing all in one session, and he would just kind of wander around the room telling us to switch back and forth between these, and not really telling us a specific one to do, but like, yeah, just move into another, do your flicking, do your pressing, doing typical Keith things. And we added in the gliding, which is supposed to be different than floating, which gliding brought back memories of working at Disney World and going on Soarin' over California, which is one of my favorite rides there, and which is literally like a paragliding device that flies you around the room while you have this great big screen in front of you showing you all of California. Whereas floating really makes me feel happy and elated, as opposed to nostalgic and remembering how I felt during that and the smells and the things like that. So kind of the same, but at the same time different. And that's what he wants. He wants it to be different. So that's nice. Moved into Francois's class. And again, we're focusing on the face of the vibrations. We haven't really done much. I think we finally got up here. So Rogers this week was a little difficult. So we had to attack while retreating. That's not something we've ever done before. We've always retreated and defend, but this time he wants us to defend while retreating and then attack and then go back into defense. And that seems more like sword fighting to me. And then whereas we were doing steps like this for our retreat, now we're doing passing steps and doing a movement during the passing step. And that, for some reason, was throwing me off. But I still love it. I still enjoy it. Moving into Tuesday, Lou's class again, and I thought we were going to end up continuing ballet. Instead, we had Jared and Aubrey presenting entertainment of the time period and music. And they had the most thorough presentation I've ever seen in my life. They took up literally every minute of the class period. Lou loved it. Moved into Colin's class, and we continued the foxtrot. And what he wanted us to do at this point, since we know all the steps for it, is to lead in a way that isn't set for the other person to know how we're going to lead. So there's 4 different steps to the foxtrot. There's the box step. There's the social walk. There's what I like to call the swing, because you kind of bounce back. And then there's the twirl, underarm twirl. And so he gave us an order in which to do these and a number of how many times to do them. The order didn't change, but the number did. Whereas we had learned do 2 box steps, then 2 walks, then 2 swings, and then 2 underarm turns. Then he took us outside and he had us do 4 boxes and 3 walks and 2 swings and then 1 underarm turn, or whatever the number was. And that would keep the other person on their toes, so they weren't leading, they were following only. Went into Rob's class and I sang Our Great Mikado Virtuous Man. He gave me a couple nice little notes. Don't move my jaw when doing my vibrato. And then I need to be singing more out of my sides as opposed to out of my front or rounding my words. I need to get everything out of here. And then he also wants more of a childlike voice on this so that my larynx is higher up. And it's not that this is a high song, it's just that that's the way it sounds. Moved into Philo's class. Again, no notes for me. Apparently I had perfect RP in her class. I don't know what's going on in there. And then back into Rob's class, doing ensemble. This time he gave us Get Me to the Church on Time. And so I guess we have 4 that we've got to memorize now. Which still, that's more things than I want to memorize. I don't know, maybe I'm just whining, but I don't want to memorize things that I'm not getting assessed on, if that makes sense. But he wants us to get assessed in that class too, because we're such a small class. So enough about Rob. Moving into Wednesday, and we had Rod again, except for this week he actually showed up, as did James Dean, the computer guy. And they showed us how to use online databases, which I have done this so many times that this class seemed very pointless to me. As a matter of fact, Wednesday seemed pointless to me completely, because not only did we learn the databases, which I've already done a million times, it's the same databases, I understand what JSTOR is, PsycInfo, all of these databases are the same in America as here. Then we went into Alex's class. He came back, and we wasted an hour and 15 minutes this time talking. And he was talking about Erda. Some of the people in the class were talking about issues with Lou. Went back into the conversation about the Oscars, and we even talked about Titanic. I felt the entire thing was pointless. The Erda auditions, I guess maybe we could talk about that in workbook class if we have time, if we're not talking about issues that we're having or whatnot. And Lou, everything about Lou should have been talked about in workbook class. There is no reason to be using up our acting class time talking about things that should be talked about in workbook class, or on these, for crying out loud. If you can't talk about it in workbook class when we're all in a group circle or whatever, talk to a teacher individually or talk on these in your journals. Why do you have to waste Alex's class time? Alex, why do you have to waste your class time? I'm sorry. I'm not meaning to get upset or to upset anybody, but that's how I feel. I feel like that class has become a waste of my time. Until we do our acting. Once we do our scenes and we're getting feedback on them, then I feel like I'm learning something. But I didn't do my scene this week. We only got to 3 of them because we wasted that hour. On Wednesday, I didn't have to go to Chris's workshop because he only ran Act 1 that day, and I'm not in Act 1 at all. So then we move into Thursday, and we went over Act 2 and Act 3, and then I think up to 4.1 is where we stopped. And all of these are scenes that I'm in. Now here's what I want to say about Chris's class. I absolutely love the fact that we're on book still. I know that sounds bad, that we should be off book sooner rather than later. We are MFA acting students. But for me, being on book while doing the blocking and running the scenes the first few times is a godsend, because I learn much better this way. My lines, the character, the energies I need to portray, all of that type of things, I learn that better being on book than trying to mechanically learn the lines or even practically learn the lines on my own. Doing that type of thing on my own, I don't do as well. I've learned that from doing it in David's class and then not doing it in Chris's class. I learn much better with being on book. And it's always been that way. I've been in so many shows over the time where I've been able to be on book for the first couple weeks, and then when we go to off book, I barely have to do any at-home memorization at all. And that's the way it is for this show. As a matter of fact, even though it's only our second time actually running the scenes, I'm already off book on 2 scenes. Just by doing the practical application of running the scenes in class. I haven't done any outside memorization, or haven't tried, because I've had to learn 9 other different things and help out people who are sick and X amount of other things that are going on here. So I just want to say that I love that we're still on book for those reasons. Moving into Friday, we ran all of the scenes that we have done already this week, Acts 1 through 3, and then 4.1. And what we're doing at that point is we're adding in Emily as the director. And so she'll come in and she'll say a line, or she'll correct somebody, or add Foley effects and things like that. It adds much more depth and humor to the story. Moving into Simon's class, did more work on the prologue, and he taught us this thing where we have to lift our sternum out and stretch between the ribs. So that was pretty interesting, actually, and that's very helpful for restoration, because you really want that good posture, and it's not just like straightening your spine. Actually lifting up your ribs and pressing your chest out, that's very much the time period. So I think that'll help. Moving into Carrie's class, I ran Great Mikado Virtuous Man again. I was so relaxed this week. I don't know what the heck happened. Like, I just got up there and did it. It was no problem. My voice sounded great. I was able to act and enjoy myself. I didn't care what was happening. It was awesome. And she really enjoyed it. Everybody else in the class really enjoyed it. And she gave me a couple notes. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.